like hopelessly trying to just do anything to Conquest, and at this point he has the shit beaten out of him, his bones are broken, he's completely fucked up, and Conquest just leans over and he just goes, "I'm so lonely, Mark." And he talks about how all the other Viltrumites don't want to be friends with him because he's so unstable and violent and fucked up. And it's about the most intimidating thing a villain could say to a superhero. And I loved it. This was the moment I absolutely like fell in love with Invincible. But the reason I'm front loading like a lot of the kind of positives here is because there is a big negative with Invincible that I know a lot of people are kind of struggling with at the moment. And I think a lot of people are going to struggle to get into. And that is how the show looks. There's been a lot going around this season about people saying that the show looks like garbage. And you know what? I can understand where people are coming from to a degree, right? Because if you look at the Invincible comic, it is actually quite a good looking comic, and like some of the pages, particularly some of the like more badass layouts, they really capture a lot of drama and a lot of like, they feel cinematic and big in a way that maybe the cartoon doesn't sometimes. But I wanted to go into specifically like why I think it looks bad and what the trade-off happening here is. So Invincible looks very simple. It's a very kind of like stylistically very simple show, definitely very like pulled back from the comics. I would say a lot of the characters, they look a little flat and their designs tend to be simplified for the animation. But that's the thing, it's simplified for the animation, and the trade-off is that a lot of the animation in Invincible is actually pretty good. Like specifically, a lot of the action scenes are very like well choreographed and laid out, and there's a lot of impact and there's a lot of drama, and like there's especially like in the character's expression sometimes, although granted I think the voice work does a lot of that because Invincible has like a stellar cast. His mom is played by Sandra Oh, his dad is played by J.K. Simmons, and they both are just amazing. So when people say Invincible looks bad, I don't really think it's the animation they're talking about, it's more so the art direction. But I think that the art direction, there is like a huge big flaw in its production, and this is actually a flaw I have some level of expertise in. I don't know if I've ever talked about it in one of these videos, but before I became a YouTuber, I was what is known as a visual compositing artist. And what a visual compositing artist is you're the person who gets the backgrounds from the background artist and the animation from the animators, and you combine them and make them look good and basically apply kind of style and atmosphere to the shots. Here's what I'm talking about. So this is some footage I did from an old show called Randy Cunningham 9th Grade Ninja. And basically my job was to take this show, so say we'd get stuff in here, like we'd get the background and we'd get the character. I would put the character on top of the background, but like if you look at that, it looks a little flat. It looks a little kind of not super interesting or like super stylish. And so what I would do then is I would add different layers. So the first thing I do here is I add some snow to the background. And then if you look as well, I added like a little tiny soft glow to the snow, like the moonlight is reflecting off the snow. I also add this rim light to the characters, just so like the character sits in the environment a little better, and all of a sudden you're not looking at like a character sitting on top of an environment, you're looking at a boy ninja standing in a forest of snow. I'd then add another layer where I'd add kind of even a little bit more glow, but now I'd add some like foreground snow as well. And you can see how the foreground snow is like kind of lighter than the background snow, and like how much that does to kind of like there's also like now a light blur on the background, like it's out of focus. And all these little touches together, like they create a huge amount of like atmosphere and like just a sense that there is something kind of interesting going on here. And like I had to do this like over and over. I worked as a compositing artist for like 6 years, and I really enjoyed it. Really liked it. I didn't like Randy Cunningham that much as a show, but I really did enjoy how it looked visually and like the different stuff I got to work on. And a lot of the times like my leads would just let me do whatever, and it was like, oh, I did this entire shot, which was so fun. This was like a whole basically a robot scanning the different things. I got to do this Hadoken. I specifically asked to be put on this. Oh, this is another shot I was super proud of as well. So you like get just like 2D fire, and like everything looks very flat. added glow to the fire. You can see the background blur, and then adding highlights to the characters, and just making it, or then all these like particle effects as well. That is what a compositing artist does. And you know, if any of the compositing artists out there have any dreams of going from compositing to teenagers screaming at you all day on the internet, I'm living proof that you can do that. So the problem is basically, if you look at Invincible, there is very little of that. A lot of the shots look very, very flat, and there's very little kind of like depth of field or lighting or like any kind of effects that takes it from characters sitting on top of a background to actually feeling like a real scene that's being shot on a camera with lighting and depth of field and all this kind of stuff. And the reason for that is, of course, not because the visual compositing artists on Invincible are lazy, which is actually something I've seen people say. It's because there's apparently 4 of them. And like, even working on Randy Cunningham, we had a compositing team of at least 12 people, and that was a lesser production than Invincible. So my heart goes out to the compositing team on Invincible. I know that when you are working with a team that small, you really have to pick and choose your battles. And considering how big Invincible has become, there really is no excuse for like the producers of this show not to be putting more money into it. And that will do a lot to curb people saying that the show looks like garbage. But yeah, I still think Invincible looks good when it needs to look good, in that I think the show moves well and the fight scenes are great and that the characters are expressive and have emotion. I also think that artistically, no, it's not a very interesting show to look at. And if you pause the show at any given moment, you're not going to be met with like a particularly interesting film. And so with all that in mind, I now want to give my impressions on season 4. There is going to be spoilers here, and probably a lot of them. So if you haven't seen Invincible, get out of here, buddy, or you can stay. So season 4 for me was not quite up to maybe season 3, which was like my favorite season, but it was interesting. And I think the most interesting thing about it is Invincible does kind of go from this sort of high school superhero, you know, fairly kind of standard thing, to becoming something more a space opera. This is the season where, after everything, Omni-Man and Mark are reunited, and Omni-Man is doing his best to no longer be a piece of shit, despite kind of objectively just being a total, absolutely horrifying individual. And it's really interesting. Like, that stuff was done really well, but it's also the season where him and Mark have to contend with the fact that they are now considered outsiders and traitors by the Viltrumites. And the Viltrumites are led by Thrag. And Thrag, I think, is the only Viltrumite who is more dangerous than Conquest. Maybe there's someone else in the comics, I don't know, but in terms of the TV show, Thrag is this completely immovable, indestructible villain, and he is now the problem. And this specific season is Omni-Man, Mark, and like their group of kind of intergalactic allies traveling to the Viltrumite home planet and battling Thrag. And I really enjoyed it once it got going. Now, to me, there were some slow episodes. I thought the episode in Hell particularly, I just didn't have enough to get invested about. I was glad to see the Devil Detective back, but he just didn't really do enough to like draw me into their whole story. But then you have Conquest coming back into it, and what I love about Conquest coming back is that you're sort of like, okay, I don't know what this dude can do that he didn't already do in his first episode. And then by the end of his appearance, you're like, holy fucking god, his fight with Mark, it's not as exciting a fight as the first fight they have, but the way it ends with Mark trying to choke Conquest unconscious and fucking Conquest just ripping out Mark's guts like a downed pinata, that is one of the more fucked up images I have ever seen put to animation, and I kind of loved it because I'm broken. But then ultimately you get this showdown between the Viltrumites and Mark's team, and it's really good. It's a really exciting fight, and like the hopelessness of Thrag and realizing how much more powerful he is, not just in Mark, but then even like Omni-Man and all their other heroes, it's great. It's really good. But where they leave it is that Thrag spares Mark for the simple reason that there's only 50 Viltrumites left alive, or less than 50 now. And he decides that, like, even though Mark and Omni-Man have destroyed like the Viltrumite home planet, he doesn't want to see any more Viltrumites die because there's just not enough of them. His race is on the brink of extinction. And it brought some subtlety to Thrag that I feel like I had kind of been wanting the entire season, because up till now, he is just evil, powerful emperor. Like, that's all he is. And this, like, kind of turn right at the end was like, okay, this is the subtlety I wanted to see from Thrag this entire time. But then you get to the final episode, and after, like, being knocked unconscious for, like, weeks or whatever, Mark wakes up and realizes that the only place for the Viltrumites left to go is to Earth. We know from Omni-Man that Viltrumites can breed with humans and create, like, basically human Viltrumites, which seem to be about as powerful as Viltrumites. So the only logical move for Thrag and the rest of the remaining Viltrumites is to go to Earth and basically fuck us into extinction. And that's, mildly troubling. So then Mark, he makes this, like, agonized journey home, and he doesn't know what's going to be waiting for him back on Earth. He doesn't know whether he's going to be walking into, like, this scorched crater. And he gets there, and there's nothing. Well, there's Earth, everything's fine, there's, like, nothing bad's having happened, and it's like, okay, I guess the Viltrumites didn't destroy Earth. But, like, the problem is that Mark is so fucking, like, traumatized from everything that's happened. He's traumatized from his fights with Conquest. He's traumatized from, like, having to watch so many people die from being a superhero. He's traumatized from, like, what Thrag is and what Thrag could potentially do to his planet and everyone he loves. And it's great. It's some really cathartic drama. And he's, like, visiting his mom, and then he has this, like, hallucination that Thrag just comes in and rips his mom's head off. He's talking to his girlfriend, and then he has a hallucination that Thrag just comes along and murks his girlfriend. And it's like, he's really genuinely fucked up. And over the course of the episode, you keep thinking, okay, when's the fight with Thrag gonna start? When is Thrag actually going to appear? And he doesn't. And it feels kind of anticlimactic, but then you get to the last 5 minutes of the episode, and Mark starts having another one of his hallucinations, his vision starts blurring, and he just sees Thrag out in the middle of the open sky. But then you realize this isn't a hallucination. Thrag is fucking here. And of course, Mark attacks him immediately. It doesn't work because it's fucking Thrag. And Thrag says one of the most unsettling things he possibly could. And it's like, Mark, the Viltrumites are not going to destroy your planet. What we are going to do is we are going to blend in with your people and breed with them until our numbers are strong again. If you don't let us do this, we have no choice but to destroy your entire planet. And Mark is so fucked up over this because he's seen what the Viltrumites do. He's seen it from, like, the very first season when Omni-Man beat the shit out of him and just wiped out, like, 200 people. He's seen, like, what this race of people are and what they're capable of, but he also has no way out of this. He's not strong enough to defeat Thrag. He's not strong enough to get these super beings off his planet, and he's also tired. Like, he's too fucked up from everything that happens, or everything's happened, and so he's like, okay, fine, that's it. And I think the reason I appreciate this is I wanted a showdown with Thrag. Like, I thought that would have been exciting, but I also don't know what you do with Invincible from this point on, if that's the case. And, like, I have no doubt there's still a bunch of plot threads that they've left hanging, like the fate of Robot in the alternate dimension universe, which I'm sure is going to come back in an interesting way. But I thought this was a really great way to continue the Viltrumite storyline, not by, like, ending everything that's happened with a big showdown, but by entering this uneasy kind of alliance. Because in real life, a lot of the time, that's what happens. You don't just overwhelmingly defeat your foe. You ultimately have to come to this kind of weird compromise, and it's unsettling and strange and cool. And the further I get away from it, the more so I get over my disappointment over no, like, final encounter with Thrag, and the more I'm kind of just excited to see what comes from here. So yeah, no, I really enjoyed season 4. Really thought it was good, and, like, just the general writing and stuff with Invincible. You know, like, I started writing my own comic last year, and watching the way they're able to weave plot lines in and out, it's just genuinely super impressive. And it's interesting to me because I've also been watching season 4 of The Boys, and The Boys for me is the very definition of a hit and miss show. I think there's great episodes of The Boys, and I think there's genuinely like terrible episodes of The Boys. I will do a video on The Boys when that season ends. I'm trying to think like, okay, what is the big difference between Invincible and The Boys? And I would say that The Boys is very cynical. It's very cynical about what the idea of a superhero is or what it can be, but it's also very cynical about humanity and what we want and how we survive in a way that I don't always feel like is super earned or makes a point in like a really interesting way. And I think with Invincible, there is a genuine, earnest love for superhero media that I really appreciate. And I say this as someone who, you know, is not that into superhero stuff. I have read a lot of superhero stuff over the years. I really like stuff like Ultimates, Old Man Logan, Push, Batman, Year One, all like a lot of the kind of classic DC Marvel stuff I do really like. World War Hulk, fucking love me World War Hulk. But ultimately, I am a person who, whenever I hear the Superman versus Goku argument, I laugh and go, Goku, fight over that in the comments. But even that being the case, I think that I just appreciate that Invincible loves superheroes in a very sincere way, and I think even when it's getting dark, even when it's getting like fucked up and even like kind of subversive with what it's doing, there is always that kind of beating heart at the center of the show, and that is why I like it. And that's it. That's everything I gotta say about Invincible. See you.
Context, Netflix wants to buy Warner Brothers Discovery for a paltry $82.7 billion. So they have to expand. The road to $100 billion isn't just paved with candy bars and YouTube videos, it's also toys, like a whole line of tiny plastic choking hazards called Mr. Beast Labs. Here's one of them. This is the rationale that justifies 600 GoPros. Be the